Hi, I'm retired NYPD Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you'll get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books. They're $10 paperback, $2.99 ebook download, including my latest NYPD Presumption and Dysfunction. Hope everybody's had a great week. There's a stomach virus going around. I had a head cold last week during that interview, and oh God, it was killing me. But that stomach virus, everybody I know seems to be going down with it, so wash your hands, people. Before we get started with this week's story, let's go to the true crime section of the New York Post. Two women who worked for disgraced ex-NYPD honcho Jeffrey Maddrey are ensnared in a federal probe of the sex for overtime scandal, the Post has learned. Detective Ingrid Sanders, Maddrey's former driver, and Detective Ada Reyes were raided by investigators, law enforcement sources said. The FBI came to their doors, executed search warrants, issued grand jury subpoenas, and has identified them as subjects in the investigation, one source said. They're in the center of the S storm, that source was quoted. The two women aren't considered targets in the investigation and aren't facing charges, sources said. Right, the FBI just comes to your house with a search warrant, takes everything out of your house. The probe was launched after the New York Post. The probe was launched after the Post December 21st front page expose about the NYPD's top overtime earner, Lieutenant Quathisha Epps. She filed a federal complaint against Maddrey, then the department's top uniform cop, alleging he used overtime to coerce her into performing unwanted sexual favors between June 23rd and December 16th, 2024. So we've covered this. It's a mess. And I kind of mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but I have a friend of mine who's kind of in the know, and he's usually right about things. He's not on the job anymore. He's retired, but he just, every time this guy has told me something weeks and months in advance about some other things, it always seems to come fruition. What I'm hearing is there's another scandal that's going to make this one look like a joke. It deals with promotions. So let me just tell you how the NYPD works. So you're a cop, you get promoted, you take a civil service exam, you become a sergeant, you take another civil service exam, you become a lieutenant, another exam captain, and then everything above that is political appointments. Now, on the detective side, to become a detective, you have to work. In my time, it was 18 months in an investigative unit. I don't know what it is now. So now you work in an investigative unit for 18 months. You get promoted to third grade detective. Now, in theory, if you do an exceptional job, you're doing God's work, you're clearing all your cases, you're making big cases, they will put you on what's called the grid. And basically, you have to do a 49, which is a department memo. It's got to be 4 or 5 pages long. They're supposed to submit it for you, but in reality, you have to fill it out, and then they go over it. And you basically have to explain what you've been doing over the course of your career and how great you are. I know, because I got put in for the grid. And you submit it. And like my lieutenant told me, he goes, "You're never going to get promoted." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "Well, you've been invited to the dance. You're not going to get picked." And I never joined fraternal organizations. And I never was a political schmoozer. I just wasn't. Now, the guys that do, that helps them. Now, that's not to say there aren't a lot of great detectives that belong to fraternal organizations and got that push. God bless them. But there's a lot of people in the NYPD, and guys and girls, you're listening out there, you know I'm right. There's detectives in the 7-5 squad or the 4-6 squad breaking their ass, clearing their homicides and doing everything else, or guys in Bronx homicide or Manhattan North homicide or Brooklyn homicide. They're solving their cases, and they're never going to get graded because they don't belong to a fraternal organization, and no one's doing anything for them. So anyway, what I've been told is at least one fraternal organization, there's a point person, and what this person was doing was detectives to get grade, or sergeants to get specialty pay, or lieutenants to get specialty pay, supposedly, were giving this point man in a fraternal organization up to $18,000, and this person in turn was kicking it up to somebody, or it's getting spread around in somewhere, I don't know what unit or what person or what rank, in one police plaza. And from there, these people were taking these names on these lists and saying, yeah, let's promote this guy. And supposedly the FBI knows about this. Some of these detectives have taken out pension loans. So there's a paper trail of this. It's bad. If this is true, I mean, this is what his sources told me. He's usually never wrong, but it looks like there's going to be yet another big time investigation with this. It's sad because what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to either lose their jobs or get demoted. And then what the NYPD is going to do is they're going to take it away. So what'll happen is they'll do away with the whole grade system. And now no one's going to get a bump in pay and no one's going to get recognition for a job well done. And supposedly what sparked this whole thing is at least two people supposedly, allegedly, took out loans or kicked up money to somebody in Police Plaza or wherever, and they were never promoted. And they complained, and I think they went to the feds. So again, this could just be a rumor, but my buddy is usually spot on with these things, so we'll see what happens. Story number 2, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, deputy mayor, whose purview included the oversight of the city's fire department, was placed on administrative leave last month after the FBI raided his home in connection with a bomb threat he made against City Hall. The Los Angeles Police Department said at the time the deputy mayor, Brian Williams, was likely the source of the threat, but feds later took the lead in the investigation due to Williams' close connections with the LAPD. You want to talk about a clown show? You got Los Angeles burning down. Nobody seems to know where the water is. The mayor is in Africa with somebody else, somebody in Africa getting an award or a promotion. She has to fly back. And her lieutenant governor, who's supposed to be minding the store, there's a federal investigation against him for making a bomb threat against City Hall. Clown show. Just a clown show. Speaking of Los Angeles, dozens of out-of-town vultures have been busted for sneaking into ritzy neighborhoods in Los Angeles wildfire evacuation zone to loot abandoned houses, and local police are naming and shaming them as a warning to the rest. You're not going to shame these people. More than 40 people have been arrested by the Santa Monica police since SWATs of the area and neighboring Pacific Palisades were evacuated last week ahead of the deadly 24,000-acre Palisades fire. There's always going to be opportunists. I remember my parents when I was a kid, little. There was a riot somewhere, and they were talking about they shoot looters. And I was like, huh? And it's like, yeah, they used to shoot looters. So maybe they should bring that back. I know it's just property, but if it was your house and you got people running in and out of your house stealing your shit, I think they got to go. This story amused me. Fed-up city bodega owners are offering a $5,000 reward for the capture of the brazen bandits dubbed the Midnight Snatchers, who snatched ATMs in 49 daring robberies across the Big Apple. The United Bodegas of America said the three-man crew has wreaked havoc across dozens of delis, ripping out ATMs and fleeing with tens of thousands of dollars during a 3-1, leaving hard-working owners reeling from the financial and emotional toll. I was looking on the post. They have photographs of these guys, and they're covered. They're covered in sweatshirts and ski masks and gloves. They're professionals. One of the guys is actually wearing an NYPD detective shirt, which I kind of thought was amusing. I'm wondering if they're taking these ATMs, so I'm wondering what they're doing with them. Are they turning up dumped in a lot somewhere where they could get prints of forensic evidence? I would think if these guys are clever, they're getting rid of these things through a friendly scrap metal processor. So NYPD, FBI, you might want to start going around to the scrap metal processors if these things aren't turning up somewhere and putting pressure on them, because that's more than likely where they're going. These things are too big and cumbersome to bury and it's probably, I would think, organized crime, probably the mob, what's left of it. So this story is funny. If any of you have watched the Eagles Green Bay Packers game, Ryan Caldwell, the disgraced Eagle fan who was captured on video heckling a female Packers fan and repeatedly calling her the C word, issued an apology on Wednesday after he was fired from his job with the DEI-focused company and banned from all future events at Lincoln Financial Field. Caldwell explained in a statement to the Post that the video circulating online does not reflect the full context of what's transpired, and my actions were not without provocation in the incident, which took place during the wild card game on Sunday. So it's a viral video, and like all viral videos, it starts somewhere in the middle, and you've got this female just sitting there, and she's like, go Packers, nothing crazy. And there's two guys standing behind her. I think they're brothers, and one is the guy that I just mentioned. And he just starts calling her the C word and heckling her. And then her boyfriend, who's filming it, who's not doing anything but filming it, like not saying, getting in the guy's grill, is like, oh, don't do that, don't say that. And he goes, and he just keeps cursing at her and cursing at him. There's a story going around that the guy that filmed it actually had a GoFundMe page to pay for him to go to the game. So do I think that there's three sides to a story? Yeah. Do I think this guy was provoked? I would say probably. Do I think that he went overboard? Absolutely. But here's what's ironic. This guy is supposed to work he's fired from his job with a DEI-focused company. I mean, he's screwed. He'll get another job, but not in that field. But it's just what society it goes to. I'll tell you, I mean, I'm a diehard Raiders fan. If I'm going to go to a game somewhere, I wouldn't wear my Raiders clothes. I just wouldn't. I mean, why would you? Just go in there anonymous and enjoy the game, and if they win, they win. They lose, they'll lose. But I mean, people are getting beat up. I think in a Ravens game earlier this year, some punk beat the hell out of two fans of another team because he didn't like that they were wearing a jersey. So I was thinking about what kind of stories to tell this week. I wrote a book, Grand Theft Auto, the NYPD's Auto Crime Division. So I'm going to tell a couple of stories. I think one of them is actually in the book. The other one isn't. But so in auto crime, my job was to investigate auto theft. Obviously, we used to pick off the pain-in-the-ass car thieves. But we were to target organized gangs. So it was probably about 2005. We were getting killed with these car wash auto thefts. So what was happening is on the Lower West Side of Manhattan, down the West Side Highway, right over by the Intrepid, where they filmed State of Grace, where John C. Reilly and Gary Oldman and Sean Penn get into a fight. Across the street, you have car washes. And what was happening is, in that neighborhood, it's money. And people with luxury autos will go into this car wash. They pull in, they get out of the car, and the car gets pulled through, and you can see your car being, washed through glass. You pay the guy, you buy your air freshener. But what you had was, there was a couple of these hood rats, and what they would do is, they would walk into the car wash, get past the register, and then they would hang around where the cars are coming off that conveyor belt. And then you got the guys with the towels that are, clean, drying off the windows, and you give them a couple of bucks. If they spotted that the owner hadn't come through yet, and you had a weak attendant that wasn't really paying attention, what these guys were doing was they were jumping into the cars and taking off. So they had hit 2 or 3 car washes several times. Like there was probably 5 or 6 vehicles taken within a month. Like everybody else is going to get caught, they got greedy. So I think on one of the later attempts, one of the guys that worked or owned the car wash was a former Israeli intelligence officer. I think he worked for the Shin Bet or the Mossad. He saw the thing go down. He ran after the car. He got the license plate of the car, the vehicle that dropped off one of the guys. He watched the whole thing go down. He watched a car. I think it was a Range Rover pull up. Guy got out. He kind of thought that was suspicious. Why isn't the Range Rover going in to get washed? He got the plate. The guy ran through, steals a car, and then the Range Rover follows him off the set with the stolen car. So I had the license plates of all these cars, and what I did was I did summons checks. And what a summons check does is it tells you what neighborhood the car is getting summonses and what time it's getting summonses. So this happens This happened on the Lower West Side of Manhattan. And if memory serves me correctly, the cars got summonses in 2 locations. One was up in Riverdale in the north end of the precinct, which is a really nice neighborhood. So I kind of figured that was just a spot to let the car cool off because they were stealing luxury cars. Back then, this is 20-something years ago, the cars were north of $40,000 to $60,000. So a car like that isn't going to stand out. Another one of the vehicles that they stole received a parking summons in the 4-8 precinct in the South Bronx. And there was a couple of summonses in the South Bronx. I think it was off of 3rd Avenue somewhere in like 170s in that neighborhood. So had these summons checks, my sergeant and I and my partner. I said, well, let's drive up to the 4-8. Let's just start driving around. Maybe we'll spot one of these cars. Find it parked, we'll sit on it, or maybe we'll make an arrest. So we go up to the 4-8. We're driving around. And I'll never forget the vehicle that was used to the getaway car. It was a black SUV. I want to say it was a Jeep, but it was a black SUV. It had Pennsylvania plates, and prior to going up to the 4.8, I ran the VIN number. The VIN number looked fugazi. It was either salvage or cloned. I called up Pennsylvania Department of Motor Vehicles. I think I went through the Pennsylvania State Police. They told me, yeah, this VIN number doesn't belong in Pennsylvania. So I knew the getaway car had to have been stolen, and they changed the VIN number, and I had a plate. So we're driving around the 4.8, and we stop at a light, and who comes right directly behind us but the SUV with the Pennsylvania plates of the getaway car? And we're waiting at this light, and it was a long light, and we're in the car. Jesus, they're right behind us. What do you want to do? Blah, 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 blah. With that, the SUV pulls alongside us and starts inching to blow the light. So I took that as an opportunity. I rolled down the window, and I showed him my detective show. I go, my man, what are you doing? He goes, oh, detective, I'm in a rush. I go, you can't go through a light. You're in the crosswalk. What if you hit somebody? Do me a favor. Just pull over for a second. All right. So he pulls over. We get him out of the car. That car is bad. We cuff them up. It's two guys. They're Bronx guys. We bring them down. Since this whole thing happened in Manhattan, we brought everything down to Manhattan. And basically, the car that they were driving was stolen from one of the car washes months ago. So they had been doing, I didn't even know about this car. This car was taken like weeks before even, I guess they were doing it, and they stopped and they started back up again. So that car, the VIN number was changed. I got the hit on that. It was stolen from Lower Manhattan. And we find parking receipts from different parking garages where they stored the cars. So I sent another couple of detectives to these garages in the Bronx. We were able to recover a couple of these stolen cars. And we had them for the stolen cars, but with something like this, you really want to make it a stronger case. And I knew that there was a couple of witnesses, a couple of the people that had dropped off their cars and had them stolen had actually gotten a look at these guys. And then you had the Israeli guy actually saw them. So what I did was I contacted them and I told them, could you come down to the Manhattan South Precinct tonight and view a lineup? So while that's going on, I need fillers. And I never have luck with fillers because usually each precinct has a detective that has a guy that he can call up. It's a street guy. Street guy will come in. He'll look in the cell. I need two short black guys. I need a tall white guy with missing teeth. They come in. They look at the guy. They go, I'll be back in 20 minutes. And they come back with 6 guys, with 6 women, or whatever you need. I don't know how they do it, but it's like they got street people on speed dial. So anyway, I think there was a homicide that night or something was going on in Midtown South, but there was no one to help me. So it was 2 black guys in their 30s, and I says, where am I going to get 2 black guys in their 30s? So one of the cops or detectives said, there's a homeless shelter down here. And I says, yeah, all right, that'll do. So my partner and I go down to this homeless shelter. And when I tell you, I wish I had the address of the name of this place. It was like the 7th circle of hell. I mean, just like, it smelled like piss as soon as we walked in the door. And these homeless shelters, I mean, they're emotionally disturbed people there. Drug addicts, it's the dregs of society, and they're yelling and screaming, and I'm going, who wants to make $20? And me. And like I've told this story where I needed 6 white guys for a robbery. I needed 6 black guys for these lineups. So I was picking them out, and we had a van. We borrowed a van. I remember we had a van, and I stuffed these guys in the van, and my God, it smelled. It wasn't our van. It belonged to another team in auto crime, that's another story. So I bring them into Manhattan South Precinct. We do the lineups, and they got picked out. I think, if not all, they got picked out. And both of the guys had bad records. One guy had gotten locked up for a robbery. Another guy had done time for shooting at somebody. So these were bad guys. They had just kind of branched into auto theft. They were in a transition period. So what winds up happening is locked them up, for these stolen vehicles, the car they were driving, the cars they stole. About a year later, they want to take it to trial. We had a Huntley or a MAP hearing, I forget. All the evidence was included, so they smartly took a plea. I think one guy got 6. Manhattan used to be really good. Now it's a clown show, but Manhattan used to be really good. If you committed a crime in Manhattan, you were going to go to jail. One guy got 6 or 7 years. The other guy got 4 or 5 years, which in the Bronx they would have walked. So I was happy with that. The other story I have is kind of funny. Almost to like the runway of my career, I'm almost done. And I got this new sergeant. And I've said this time and time again. I was very lucky in my 20 years with the NYPD in that I never had a sergeant that made my life miserable on patrol, in narcotics, in auto crime. Always guys were willing to work with me. And this guy was a young guy, was in his early 30s. He had his own ideas. And I was there 10 years. He really didn't have any interest in what I had to say. And he had a side business. He owned a lawn care business. And that took precedent of us investigating crime. So during the summertime, we had to do 4 to 12s because he was cutting people's lawns in the daytime. And in the wintertime, he would plow people's driveways. He had a snow removal business. So it flipped. We did days. Couldn't do 4 to 12s in the wintertime. So anyway, I tried talking to this guy a couple of times. It just was always just a pain in the ass. So anyway, what winds up happening is I get a phone call. Some guy up in Boston was looking to buy a car. Why he was looking on Craigslist in New York City, I guess he must have really wanted this. It was a Lexus. I don't remember what model. But he saw this Lexus on Craigslist. He asked the guy for maybe he traveled back and forth to New York. I don't know, but the guy lived in Boston. Anyway, he asked this guy, he's looking to buy this Lexus, and the guy gives him the VIN. He runs it through Carfax, and the car comes back stolen. So to this guy's credit, some guy up in Boston who does business in New York gets the number to the auto crime division, calls me up, and says, I don't know if you guys are interested, but there's some guy on Craigslist trying to sell a stolen vehicle. I said, all right, well, give me the information. And so what I did was, first thing I did was I called the owner. The car was stolen out of New Jersey. I called the owner up, and I said, was this car stolen? They said, yeah, it was stolen out of my driveway like a month ago. I said, all right. Oh, do you have it? I said, no. You don't want to tell people, what you're doing. A, in case you don't get it back. B, if they're part of it. Then I call the insurance company up. Is this car stolen? Are you the owner now? 30 days gone by. Do you want it back? Yes. You're willing to sign an affidavit if I make an arrest? Yeah. So what I did was, in our office, we had what's called a hello phone. A hello phone is, most detective squads have one. It's a phone hooked up in the office. It's usually in the supervisor's office or a room that is going to be quiet. And if it ever rings, you just answer hello. You don't say auto crime, Detective Ferrari, or Bronx homicide. And you use that for confidential investigations. The phone, I think, is untraceable. The first thing I do is I email this guy on Craigslist and tell me about the car, how many miles, blah, 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 blah. Then I call him. Sounded like a young guy. He says, well, where are you from? He was out in Queens, right over the Throgs Neck Bridge. I says, all right, how about Tuesday at like 5 o'clock? I come out there and take a look. He goes, all right. And he goes, I'm only taking cash. I said, no, I wouldn't have it any other way. Don't worry about it. So I tell my sergeant, and he rolls his eyes, and he's like, well, I mean, you're going out to Queens to make this arrest, and I don't know the Queens system. I go, you don't have to know the Queens system. I know how to process an arrest in Queens. Yeah, all right. I says, all right, so we're going to go. So I'm meeting this guy at 5. So let's leave here about 3:30, get there early, kind of maybe circle the block, make sure there's not a bunch of guys around. Let's do this the right way, right? So at 3:30, I'm like, boss, you ready to go? Yeah, I'll meet you out there. You're going to meet us out there? I think you should come with us now. No, you go ahead. So now I'm going out to meet this guy to make a buy by myself with my partner, right? So we get out there. I'm sitting up the block from this place. He's got the car parked in front of the house. It looked like it was on the up and up. And I had taped a recording device underneath my armpit. I had to pull over. And I went with my partner, and I keep trying to raise the sergeant. And it's going on 5 o'clock. Yeah, we're just coming over the Throgs Neck Bridge now. Just go ahead. Go ahead? Yeah. See if the guy will come out. Talk to him. So now I'm doing a buy by myself with my partner with no field team. But this just the way this guy was. He flew by the seat of his pants. So knock on the door. Young kid comes out. How you doing? Blah, 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 blah. I saw your car on Craigslist. We talked the other day. Blah, 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 blah. He comes out. I look quick at the public VIN in the window. It matches the one of the stolen car. And looking at the car and, where'd you get the car from? And gives me some bullshit story that his friend's father was selling it. His name's not on the title, but there's nothing to worry about. He has the title. I said, can I see the title? And the first thing he does is he hands me a bogus New Jersey title. I mean, I'm I'm in auto crime, so I'm used to knowing what documents look like, especially a New Jersey title. I used to see them all the time. So he hands me a fictitious Jersey title with the stolen VIN on there. So he's trying to sell me a stolen car with a fictitious title. So we're going back and forth, and I says, where did you get the car from? Oh, my friend's father was leaving the country. The family moved out of the country. They were going back to Greece. This whole big bullshit story. So finally, my partner and I just looked at each other. We had enough. We put him on the hood of the car. We cuffed him up, and we're stuffing him into the back seat of the police car. And who rolls up? My sergeant and his driver. And he's like, oh, good. You got this done already? Great. Well, let's go to the precinct. I got to sign your paperwork. I got to leave early today. So I was like, okay, great. So that's just kind of the things that I had to deal with later in my career. The first 9.5 years, first 9 years were great. The last year was a little shaky. But after that incident, I went to my lieutenant, who was a great guy. This was after Chumley. I spoke about him. Chumley had left. Chumley wasn't a bad guy, but there was another lieutenant, and I went up to him and I said, listen, are you happy with my work? He goes, yeah. I said, you happy with my activity? He goes, yeah, why? I go, I can't work for this guy anymore. What's wrong? And I'm like, no, it's not corruption or anything. I says, it's differences of opinion. There were 2 or 3 other sergeants in that office. I says, can you just put me in another team? And he goes, let me talk to this other guy. And the other guy I had worked for previous, and he went to major case, and then he came back. So basically, he did me a huge favor, this lieutenant. He swapped me, and I went into another team, and then I was able to complete my career without any hiccups. But anyway, that's my 2 auto theft stories. Hopefully next week I will have another guest like Red was last week. He was a good guest, right? I mean, all that stuff about the Chicago Mafia and corrupt cops and stuff, I was quite interested in it. And I dug this out of my closet. I found this. It's cold down here in Florida. It's like, well, I know if you're in Saskatchewan or something, you're freezing all the time. But down here in Florida, it's in its 50s. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my listeners in Tampa, Florida, Louisville, Kentucky, Lehigh Acres, Florida, Dalton, Georgia, and South Range, Wisconsin. If you work in law enforcement or have an interesting criminal background, please drop me a note on Twitter, Instagram if you'd like to be a guest on the show. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. And if you enjoy the content, check out my Amazon author page. Just type in my name, Vic, Ferrari Like to Call, where you can preview all my NYPD books for free, including NYPD Presumption and Dysfunction. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I want to thank everybody for their support. It really means a lot to me. And I will have another episode out next week. Take care.